I am so fired up about this tax cut. This Trump tax cut, the economy is going to explode. And we've run all the numbers. So, you know what? I can go over these, but we run all the numbers. This is a great tax cut for the middle class. Corporate income tax coming down, loopholes being shut, repatriation, money is going to be coming back, wages up, jobs up, economy 4.2%. That's what I predict. This is an exciting time. Your children living in the basement, paying off their school debt, can't get a job, done. They're all going to get jobs. It's coming. We just got to get this tax cut done. Now, joining us now, the acting secretary of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, that's better known, the acronym HHS, is Eric Hargan. Mr. Secretary, good to have you with us, sir.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Now, excited that you're on today, and what brings you, Mr. Secretary, to Richmond?
Well, as you may know, this month, November, is Veterans and Military Families Month. So coming to the Richmond area to celebrate our veterans, meet with some of them, and talk about a program that we have that's been very successful, veterans-directed home and community-based services. So it's a program we have with the VA that allows veterans to they have a flexible budget, and they use it to hire their family and friends and neighbors to deliver care and services. It's a very flexible program, and it's had great successes in helping veterans care for themselves, stay in their own homes.
Now, Secretary Hargan, you're the acting secretary, so how do you get things done?
Well, we have a great team at the department that helps implement the president's agenda on this. So we have 89,000 employees at the department that help get all the programs done to help serve the American people and get them the best care while also being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollar. So, but it's a busy time, as you can imagine. We've got department has hundreds of programs to run, and we're all hands on deck all the time these days.
You know what? And so I understand what you're working on now for the veterans, but as the acting secretary right now of one of the most important agencies for many people in the United States, Mr. Acting Secretary, what is your top priorities now?
Well, right now we're really focused on the opioids crisis. I mean, this is a crisis that, affects me personally. I grew up in rural Illinois where this has been going on for a long time, but now it's affecting everyone, whether it's people who are having to struggle with addiction to prescription drug opioids or to the flood of foreign manufactured illegal drugs coming over the border. It's really affecting so many people, tens of thousands dying every year, and we've got to figure out a way to put a stop to it. So we declared a nationwide public health emergency after being requested by the president to look at that, and we've been implementing a strategy on multiple fronts to really focus on this. It's a huge crisis that we have to really turn the corner on, with obviously the frontline heroes being the individuals, the families, the churches, state and local governments that are really going to lead the fight here on the front lines against this. But it has really gotten out of hand and is of a different nature than we had seen before, just in the level of overdoses and deaths that we're seeing right now. So, we're kind of proceeding on multiple fronts and trying to get the resources that we have. I mean, we have, as I mentioned, lots of people, lots of hands to help out. And, when the president says focus, we focus. So we're working very sort of every day. That's probably the top of mind for me every day.
Well, look, I appreciate the work that you're doing on this, Mr. Acting Secretary. Can you walk us through the real genesis of the opioid crisis? Is it,
sure,
at the beginning of this, is it doctors that just overprescribing pain medicine, or people going to doctors wanting a prescription for something? I mean, my doctor's old school. I mean, I got to beg him for, he gives me 2 aspirin. I got to beg him for a script. He doesn't want to give one out. A lot of people, they go to the doctor, they want to get a piece of paper. They want to go to the drugstore. They want to have something. What is the genesis of this?
Well, part of this was something that is completely explainable. For a while, the medical community and the research community had what they thought of as good evidence that opioid drugs were not as addictive as it turns out that they are. And so some of the guidelines that were used to prescribe drugs changed and made it easier to prescribe these drugs. And so the medical community, in all goodwill, started prescribing the opioids at a much higher rate than had happened before. At the same time, you have less expensive drugs. Drugs become less expensive over time. So you have less expensive drugs, signals from the medical community that it's okay to kind of open the taps on it. But it turns out that as more evidence has arisen, that there is far more addiction potential in these drugs than people had thought a couple of decades ago. So now working to kind of get that under control, CDC changed the opioid prescribing guidelines. But that's sort of like, changing the direction of a tanker ship. You've got tens of thousands of prescribers in the United States, more really, and so you have to make that change. In addition, there are the patients many times who are addicts. They want to get the drugs, and they shop around for doctors to get or shop for doctors across state lines to get access to what they want. And so that's an issue. On the sort of illicit or illegal front, you have the costs for fentanyl coming down dramatically because of production primarily in China that is just staggering. And so you have a flood on the illegal side. You have very cheap drugs, and on the legal side, you had a.
So just to clarify for the listeners we have that are not familiar with fentanyl, can you just give us a quick description of what fentanyl is and how the Chinese are involved in producing it?
Well, I mean, the thing is that it's a cheap man-made opioid that is very powerful, and it previously there wasn't effects to this, but manufacturing techniques have advanced to the point where it can be produced unbelievably cheaply, and you can have in single place you can find hundreds of millions of doses of fentanyl just shipped into remote areas and distributed. So it is it's a disaster of the highest order. It's something, frankly, that the Chinese don't tolerate inside their own country, but they certainly export it. And it gets over the border. I mean, trying to track exactly now through Department of Justice and law enforcement exactly how a lot of the pipelines are coming into the country. At HHS, we have to deal with the health consequences of what's happening and try to fix the broken lives that come around because overseas manufacturers they're not willing to poison their own people, but they're willing to poison ours.
The crisis is unbelievable, and of course, Mr. Secretary, as this goes forward, then what happens is when people are unable to get their pain medication, opioid medication, then they're turning to drugs, which are now cheaper than trying to get the pills on the black market. So they turn to various forms of very addictive drugs, which then, of course, greatly exasperates the problem. Acting Secretary Hargan, your potential secretary, Secretary Azar, who was up for Senate nomination, Alex Azar. Now, if he gets confirmed and Azar becomes the secretary, then do you remain in the role? Do you go to deputy secretary? What will your role be?
Yeah, that's actually the job I signed up for as deputy secretary. I was confirmed in that job, and I had 4 whole days as deputy secretary before the president made me acting secretary. So I had a sort of a short runway as deputy secretary. So yes, when I take this hat off, when Alex is confirmed, then I'll go back to being the chief operating officer of the department.
Right. So you'll be the deputy secretary and the chief operating officer, and right now you hold those roles, plus you're the acting secretary,
Right.
Until such time as Mr. Azar is confirmed by the U.S. Senate as the secretary of HHS. And of course, we all know what happened to Tom Price. You don't have to comment on it, but Tom was my congressman for a long time in Georgia, and you can't take $30,000 private planes to go to Washington to Philadelphia, which takes like an hour by car and 55 minutes on Amtrak for $89, not $30,000. That's why I got fired. It is what it is. Good riddance. Now, let's get to Obamacare. It's not been repealed, so it is the law of the land. Your department has a big role in implementing it, whatever it is, as best it can successfully. One of the questions that I know Senator Wyden has said that he's going to ask Alex Azar in the confirmation process is, are you going to throw Obamacare under the bus, or are you going to do your job and try to implement it as best that you can within the laws we have it now? How do you see that playing out, sir?
Well, the law has, we have to faithfully execute the laws. That's the role of the executive branch. So Congress gives us the laws after the president signs them, and we have to faithfully implement them. The law itself, as everyone knows by now, has a lot of flaws in it. And, the question, and there's a lot of flexibility within the law. So we are, we're working to provide options to the American people. We're working to make sure that we protect them and their access to health care, and to protect their health care overall. That's our job. We have to work with what we're given, but we have to keep in mind that the ultimate goal is the health of the American people and their ability to access care, and also the fact that they should be able to direct their own care flexibly. They know their circumstances better than anyone else does, and so we're trying to work with what we've been given with this experiment in health finance that was given, put on the American people, and we have to, for now, work with what we're given. And some of the choices, as you've seen, when we had to turn off some of the subsidies that were illegal and unconstitutional, that were, as the judge said, that was an example where they attempted to fix it in the last administration, and the courts disagreed with how they did it. And so we have to live both within the confines of the law as it is right now, but do our best to help the American people deal with the law.
Were you surprised at the level of Obamacare enrollment over the past month? Did you think it would be higher than it is, lower than it is? Some people were saying it was up from what the estimates were.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was a lot of commentary when the enrollment period was modified that people wouldn't enroll, but obviously they have. They got the word. They got the word, and so it's been a pretty busy enrollment season, as you've seen, even without there being extra advertising dollars given over that had been requested by some in Congress. So I think there were a lot of estimates on what was going to happen, but obviously there's been a lot more uptake than some people had expected. But on the other hand, we have to wait to see what the final numbers are. These things have ebbs and flows over time, and so we're going to hit the heavy season farther into December when we see what's actually going to be happening with those enrollment numbers and see how many Americans ultimately decide to enroll.
Well, we're going to find out soon enough before the end of December. Yep. Acting Secretary of HHS with us, Eric Hargan. Only got a couple more minutes now. You're in Richmond today. Just give us a rundown. We know you have a busy day. What's your agenda?
Well, I'm going to meet actually with one of our veterans who has been accessing this program. He himself is a Vietnam vet, and he has been able to use this program very successfully. In fact, he's becoming a he's become a certified caregiver himself, so he's actually a great example of vets helping other vets. And so, very excited to meet some of these veterans who have really inspiring stories. I'll give you, one example. We had somebody who was able to use this program. There's a veteran in his 20s from a recent conflict. He got a traumatic brain injury, marathon runner, but he couldn't anymore remember how to get home from his long-distance run. Now, his wife, as you may expect, is the primary caregiver, and she's also the family breadwinner, but she is a busy lady, and she had no interest in becoming a marathon runner to help her husband out. But that's the way he keeps his mind clear. That's the way he keeps on track. So they actually got innovative. They accessed this program, and he hired one of his Army buddies to run with him to ensure he finds his way home, and also, incidentally, gives his wife some rest from being the caregiver. So this program allows him to, it does double duty. It supports the veteran and also gives his wife, the caregiver, a break. And it keeps people in their homes. And so we're here to really hear from the vets and kind of, also show, we want to make sure everybody understands that we get some, that VA and HHS, we're working together on this program, and we wanted to show our support both for the veterans here on the last day of Veterans and Military Families Month, and also kind of highlight this program because we think that this is a great program. It actually keeps veterans out of institutional care, which vets don't want to be in, families don't want them to be there, and actually this saves the taxpayer money while giving people flexibility to design their own care, which is what we're all about.
So if a veteran wanted more information on how this program might benefit them or how they might get involved, where do they go? What do they do?
They can go to va.gov and access this. It's the Veterans Directed Home and Community-Based Services Program. And I'm going to be actually talking also side by side with some of the Virginia folks as well who are there to support it. That's where I would start. There's a website that's a one-stop shop that they can access through there. That should give them information where they can try to access this and get a budget for themselves to make sure that they can design their own care, and I think helps everybody.
All right, so you want to go to va.gov and then just put that in the search bar, and you're going to find it. Great program. We're out of time. I want to thank Acting Secretary and COO and Deputy Secretary. He's got 3 hats he's wearing. Eric Hargan from the Health and Human Services Committee, and soon to be the official, going back to, this is hard to keep track of, Deputy Secretary and COO of HHS when nominated Alex Azar hopefully becomes the
hopefully
secretary.
The Senate moves swiftly on this.
Let's get tax reform done first, and then we'll get to your nominees. That focused. They can't chew gum and work at the same time. But I'm telling you, Eric, if Trump passes this tax cut, if this thing gets passed, the economy is going to explode. The Republicans are going to maintain control of the House. Trump is going to get reelected. Jobs are going to be coming in. Wages are going to be going up. And you're really going to be fired up about it.
And you know what? Healthier economy means healthier Americans. Work, jobs are themselves a great benefit to people, even in keeping themselves healthy. So healthier economy is healthier lives, so I completely endorse that.
All right. The Acting Secretary of HHS, Eric Hargan, in Richmond today, in Rich Vegas. Eric, thanks for being with us. I really appreciate the time and your unabashed candor on some of these important issues of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.